Welcome back to Season 4 of Pathways by Grenadian STEAM, the podcast where we chat with West Indian professionals at home and in the diaspora who have worked in one or more of the fields of science, technology, engineering, architecture, or mathematics to understand what led them to choose the path they did, the successes, failures, and learnings they've had along the way, and in general, what careers are out there. This season, in addition to debuting full video episodes on YouTube and Spotify to help you feel more engaged, we will be including our members, both students and professionals, in the conversations, inviting them to share their own thoughts, ideas, and experiences on the topics brought up by our guests. This is in an effort to encourage and normalize discussions among people of all ages and levels within society. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the journey on today's pathway. Our guest for today is Josh Hector, a licensed psychologist from Grenada and a proud Caribbean national. He holds a Bachelor of Arts in General Studies with emphasis in guidance and counseling from the Jamaica Theological Seminary and a Master of Science in Counseling Psychology from the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill. He has functioned in the roles of guidance counselor at Halfway Tree Primary School in Kingston, Jamaica, and counseling psychologist at a Barbadian agency called Parados, which stands for Parent Education for Development in Barbados, out of which he was actively involved in school and community outreach programs. In Grenada, Josh is the founder and counseling psychologist at Optimal Soloutions, where he offers counseling, psychotherapy, teletherapy, workshops, seminars, and employee assistance programs. In line with his focus on self-development, Josh is currently pursuing his doctorate in clinical psychology at California Southern University. He is also the treasurer of the Grenada Psychological Association and an executive council member at large within the Caribbean Alliance of National Psychological Associations. Being a helping professional at heart, he considers it a blessing to interact with others and share insightful tips to practical and effective living. Josh, welcome to Pathways.
Thank you so very much.
I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with us today a little bit about your experiences, what you've learned, and what it is that you do as a psychologist.
The pleasure is mine.
So to get things started and give the listeners a little overview of who you are, I'm going to ask you 5 pretty quick questions just to lay the groundwork.
Okay.
So first of all, tell us, where specifically did you grow up?
So specifically, I grew up in St. David's.
Okay.
Right. To be exact, a small community called Pedmata.
Okay.
Right. St. David's.
Mm-hmm.
I moved around a little bit thereafter, but I could safely say that my childhood into early adolescence was spent in that region.
Okay. Noted. And can you list for us every school that you've attended from childhood up to this point?
Right. So the very first school I attended was a school that actually it no longer exists, called Hosanna Christian Academy, where I went to pre-primary school and primary school. And my class 5 class would have been the final class 5 class. Like after that, when we graduated, the school closed down thereafter. Then after this, I moved on to Presentation Brothers College and TAM-CC. And beyond that, that is where I went to JTS in Jamaica.
Okay.
And UE Cave Hill to do my master's. And now my doctorate is being done at an American school called California Southern University.
Okay, thank you. So as a student, a young student, so secondary school, primary school, what type of a student would you describe yourself as, or would others have described you as?
Naturally gifted.
Okay.
To be very honest, I don't recall studying in primary school.
Mm-hmm.
Not even for common entrance at the time. I just remember reading a lot of books, storybooks.
Yeah.
In my spare time. That was definitely a pastime. I started reading early and I read a lot of books. And I did that more than studying. I was very diligent with my homework and assignments and things like that. I definitely stayed on top of the work. But in primary school, in my earlier years, I think naturally gifted would have described me, although that might have run out at a later point, right? But
it always does.
Yeah, naturally gifted for sure.
Nice. All right. And so what was the first job that you ever took on, or first thing you ever did to make money?
The first thing I ever did to make money was actually a job for Christmas at this store in town.
Okay.
Sunshine, that's the name of that store.
Yeah.
I worked there for like 2 weeks during Christmas. That was my very first job.
Okay. Do you remember how old you are?
I could have been like 13.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Starting early. And your current job or profession, you kind of gave that away already, but...
Yes, I'm a full-time psychologist at the moment.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have the lay of the land. I want to dig into a little bit more details on some of the maybe experiences that have led you to where you are today.
Right.
So it's my understanding that initially you wanted to become an HR professional. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Was that out of secondary school, or at what point did you decide on that?
This may have originated late in secondary school, if I remember correctly, but more so during TAMCC.
Okay.
I guess I was just interested in human resource management. I think that resulted from the fact that my dad was an HR manager.
Okay.
He was a technician and then he became an HR manager. And so it kind of looked interesting. So I could safely say that is how I became exposed to HR. And that must have been the reason why I wanted to do it.
Got it. Okay. And so did you actually begin taking steps to follow that path?
Yes, because at TAMCC, I did an associate's degree in business studies.
Got it.
So the natural progression for me would have been to perhaps go to SJU and do an undergraduate program in business studies and then move to HR thereafter.
So then what happened along the way that drew you into psychology?
So let me put a disclaimer out to say that my experience is not prescriptive. It's not something that I think other people should try to adopt because it worked for me. It really might not work for everybody. I literally went kicking and screaming, basically, to the Vega Theological Seminary. Like, I really did not want to be there.
Okay. Tell us more about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, it resulted from, I guess, a struggle between myself and my dad, who felt like it's something that I should have done, right? And that was not in view for me at all. And I ended up, ultimately, when I recognized that I literally had no choice, I ended up looking through the programs and choosing the shortest one, which was an advanced bachelor's degree in general studies with an emphasis in guidance and counseling. And my thought was, I'm going to get in and get out, right?
So just to clarify, was the intent of this to become a psychologist or just to give you what was the goal from your father, I guess, at that point?
Yeah, I think he perhaps did not consider me even becoming a psychologist. I think he wanted me to do some kind of a biblical study, right? In life, and that's definitely not what I wanted to do. And the reason why I'm saying that I'm not prescribing it is because I really don't want some parent out there to hear this and be like, this could work and this is what we should do.
Yes.
No, that this is just my story. Right?
Fair enough.
So I actually did just a couple Bible study courses, but the bulk of my coursework was actually psychology related.
Okay.
Right? Intro to psych, theories and techniques of psychology, psychological assessment, and so on. I even had to do a practicum at a primary school in Kingston.
Right.
After primary school. And somewhere in the midst of doing this thing that I really was supposed to just jump into and then jump out as quickly as possible after 2 years, I fell in love with the discipline.
Wow.
And so much so that I really did not see myself doing anything else, especially after getting that practical experience. And so before I graduated, I actually applied to UE Cave Hill. A week or so before graduation, I got a call that said, hey, we got 90 applications throughout the region. We only accepted 15, and you are one of the 15.
Wow. What did that application look like? Just curious. Just a standard school application, or were there other requirements?
Well, of course, I had to, the whole transcript, references. I had to do a personal statement, just talk about myself and why I wanted to do this program, and I was successful.
Okay.
And so I had a summer break and went straight to grad school thereafter.
Okay, so at this point, kind of, cold to hot, all of a sudden you're into psychology and this is what you want to do. Was there any point after that where you were concerned that, maybe this wasn't the right choice?
Yes, there was a point. Actually, after completing my master's degree in Barbados, I actually, during that period, I decided I was going to just remain there, right? And apply for permanent residence. And I was well on the way to just remain in Barbados. And then I got this nudge to come back home, which I was really in two minds about, but I did so eventually. And it was rough because I came home expecting to be employed in psychology and help the community and do all these great things because I was being helpful in another country. And so it follows that should I come back home, of course, I would be able to do this.
Right.
But it didn't work out that way because I sent out a lot of applications, had some spectacular interviews because I was never really nervous going into an interview. And so the interviews went well and people went as far as telling me, well, this is what you're going to be paid and all that stuff. And meanwhile, after waiting for feedback for some time and then calling, I get to find out, oh, we gave somebody else a job. So that was very rough for me. And I really started feeling as if perhaps I made a mistake. Perhaps this is not it. I started one job immediately when I got home. It did not last a couple months because it wasn't a good fit. It was frustrating to me and my employer at the time. So I just decided to walk away from it. And lo and behold, this is where the story gets particularly interesting.
Okay.
Because having been a musician all my life, I actually, myself and my brother, with the help of a family friend who was a sponsor, we started a band and we were full-time musicians for 3 years, as in with music paying the bills in Grenada, right? And somewhere along the line, I began to feel as if well, perhaps this is where I need to be. Okay. But
So-
something. Mhm.
Sorry, I don't want to cut your story, but just to understand, when you got back, what were some of the options that were available to you in terms of where you could apply for jobs?
Right. So I was pretty much applying to educational institutions,
Okay.
right? Both secondary and tertiary,
Okay.
to fill roles related to counseling of some kind.
Okay. Got it.
And there were vacancies, so it's not that I was just applying and without being aware of vacancies. There were vacancies, but none of those worked out.
Got it. Okay.
After leaving the first job that I worked here officially, I chose to be a musician full time.
And that worked out. You paid the bills.
It paid the bills. And there was scope for expansion and all of that. But lo and behold, during a performance, a gentleman came and walked up to me while we were on a break and said, "Hey, I heard you have a master's degree in psychology. Meet me at my office. Let's talk." All right, a gentleman from SGU who was very, very instrumental in, I guess, he kind of touched the button that caused me to end up back in psychology, because I had, truth be told, I had forgotten about it. That's the honest truth.
Yeah.
Like, master's degree, I was like, well, at least I have that, but perhaps this is not what
Not
it should
calling.
be. Right?
Okay.
And so he said to me, and I'll refer to him, I'm sure he might not mind, Dr. Omawali Amuleru Marshall. Very, very good friend and brother now. When I met with him, he said, basically, I heard you have this degree. Find a place and I'll help you out. I'll actually help you get it going. And do you think I was interested in that?
Not very.
Not
So
really.
was he a psychologist? Or
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was. Right. With more emphasis in public health, but he was definitely a psychologist as well.
Okay.
And some months passed, and then I recognized, wait a minute, he planted a seed that obviously it started growing, it germinated, it started growing, and I couldn't wrestle with it any longer. I went back to him, and if I went back to him in February of 2016, by March, I had my first practice up and running.
Wow. And so this is Optimal Solutions?
No.
Oh, okay. So there's
My
a
very
step to
first
this.
practice actually was called Lighthouse Development Center. And it was further away from town.
Mm-hmm.
It was in St. Paul's. And how it really began was that I was doing pro bono work for the government, basically, right? I was seeing clients from the public sector for a period because there was this pilot employee assistance program going on.
Okay. So how did that connection begin? So he helps you find a location, right? And then
And he helped with the connection as well.
Got it. Okay.
Recommended me.
Okay.
For it. There were a few people in the original meeting, but ultimately, when the smoke cleared, I was literally the only one actually seeing those clients.
So how long did that go on for, and how was that experience?
Well, the first year or so of it, close to a year, yeah. I was doing it pro bono while still doing music now. So I did not drop music altogether. Music was still paying the bills. So I was working that job at night and doing psychology during the day.
I see.
Right. And so that lasted for just about a year pro bono until it moved past that, and then I was actually getting paid for it. The program went on for some time. Of course, there have been, I guess some changes, variations to it up to now, but that was really my first point of contact with people and the public and clients.
Right.
This employee assistance program, which through the public sector exposed me to a lot of people.
Okay. And so, well, I could go two ways with this, but what was that experience all you needed to kind of propel you back into the world of psychology, or was there another trigger?
So there was another trigger.
Okay.
Because just about 2 months or 3 months into this arrangement with the public sector, I was also doing workshops and presentations, seminars for groups of people from the public sector. And I was doing a workshop with a partner who practically said to me, hey, I think you would make a good lecturer. And truth be told, by the following January, I was lecturing at St. George's University part-time. Up until March of 2020, May of 2021.
Wow.
I was lecturing at St. George's University.
Is that something that you had ever seen for yourself?
Never. Actually, never wanted to do it.
Okay. I'm seeing such a thread in like different people that I'm talking to on this podcast where their like trajectory in life is either changed by the people that they meet or the experiences that they just kind of open themselves up to that they weren't planning on.
Right. So and that is definitely the case for me. The way my life is set up now, if I look at the fact that I initially did not even want to move back to Grenada, right? To moving back to Grenada, to all the bits and pieces, it seemed kind of disorganized, but I could see a thread through the entire thing that led me to this point. It was not as disorderly as it felt at the time. And so once I started lecturing, of course, that sharpened my knowledge in psychology because I was also interacting with the material. And I started doing other things where I reached out to the private sector to do the same type of employee assistance program, to offer that to their organizations and the employees. And that also began to work out as well. Okay,
so that was accepted.
Yes.
By the majority of people, at least.
Well, I mean,
maybe not the majority, but a decent amount.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right. So, well, now I'm going to ask you a little bit about maybe the practice or just therapy and mental health in general in Grenada.
Right.
Because I honestly didn't even know that we had employee assistance programs at any level in Grenada. And a few of the things that you would hear from locals is, they don't trust these people, they don't trust therapists, all their business going to be on the street, or they don't even know where to go, that someone like you exists. So can you speak to any of those concerns from a national perspective or from specifically what you've experienced in your practice?
Okay, so interestingly, there's a movement that remains secretive simply because people are not going to walk around shouting loudly that I attend therapy or I go to the psychologist. But let's put it this way. When I had my first practice from then to now, then I was perhaps looking at 1 or 2 clients per week. That is a lot different now. People are actually interested and reaching out to access this service.
Good.
Right?
Good.
It is, so I hear people talking about the stigma and the apprehension, but right under their noses, there's so much movement in this field right now that it's almost immeasurable because people are definitely reaching out, making contact. Hey, I need help. Can I book a session? I would like to see somebody. I have this issue, I have this challenge, and I need professional help. I'm seeing this now more than I've ever seen it.
I love to hear that. And that's, I would love for us to get to the point where it's okay to talk about it. You know, it's okay to say, yes, I go to counseling, you should go too, that kind of thing. But baby steps, right?
Yeah. And, you know, the confidentiality issue where people feel as if their information is going to leak out. The truth be told, I speak for myself, and I'm hopeful, right, that the other persons in the discipline, right, my colleagues are definitely maintaining. I can't speak for everybody, but I have confidence in the people that I know that they are actually being ethical in the handling of people's information, because we are both morally and legally bound to operate with confidentiality, right? The only time we are mandated to breach confidentiality is if a person indicates that they plan to kill somebody, they have concrete plans to kill somebody, to kill themselves, or that a child or vulnerable adult is being abused. Then and only then can we breach confidentiality to make a report. One, for safety's sake, to protect somebody, and 2, if not, we actually become accessories to a crime.
Right.
Because we knew and we said nothing.
Yeah.
Right? I have never had an issue with this, nor do I plan to start. Because it protects me, the professional, my reputation, as well as it protects the client.
And so that's great to hear. But another thing that people may be uncomfortable with that I've heard people talk about is that Grenada is so small that, you know, you will, I know generally like in bigger countries, you would say you would maintain certain distances or relationships, professional relationships with your clients. But in Grenada, it's likely that you're probably going to see a client, they'll see you outside of a session.
Right.
How is that addressed, if at all?
So it's really addressed with the client in this way, just so that you know, as much as I'm protecting your confidentiality, you have to do so as well. I'm not gonna, and Grenada is different. If we look at the international guidelines, for example, that may say you're not going to treat with anybody who is even an acquaintance, like somebody you know around. Mm-hmm. Well, to an extent, that is a bit impractical in Grenada.
Right.
Right? But if and when such a person is met, and no, you don't see close friends and family members, for example. But if such a one is met in a public space, they already know that we are not going to be talking about anything related to the sessions. No, I've had some people kind of go ahead and shout, hey, I want to book another session next week, you know?
Oh, right.
Like, I mean, you kind of get that, but not in excess. People generally understand, and there's a code that we operate by, where we're not going to have that type of conversation somewhere in public.
Okay. So it's an understanding, mutual understanding with the clients. Great. Keep listening. We'll be right back after a short break. Enjoy a stay at True Blue Bay Boutique Resort, a family-run, eco-friendly waterfront resort in the beautiful island of Grenada. Choose between tropical rooms, suites, or villas, and enjoy complimentary breakfast, access to 4 pools, guided water sport activities, as well as the option for spa treatments, yoga classes, diving, and snorkeling trips. Relax by one of the pools and get drinks served to you from the poolside bar, or go adventuring the coastline on our kayaks, finding turtles, eagle rays, or even lobsters. Perfect for families, couples, and single travelers, True Blue Bay Resort has something for everyone. Email reservations at truebluebay.com for bookings and inquiries. So what exactly, you mentioned that you had this previous EAP program and so on that you got started with. What led you to the founding of Optimal Solutions, which you're currently working out of?
Well, Optimal Solutions really, I guess it was a transition into a new place, a new situation, new season. Life has hardly ever been static for me. And so the time came when a sort of a rebranding, I guess, had to take place. And Optimal Solutions is so, well, it's ambiguous in a sense. It does not necessarily say counseling services, right? Or counseling clinic or psychotherapy center, which is pretty much a bit in your face. This is what we do. Yeah. I was pretty much just rolling with the landscape, and rather than a name that would perhaps kind of clash for some people when they look at it and they don't want to walk in to this space if the sign is next to the road, for example. Going to Optimal Solutions I guess it's easier in that regard. Because some people interestingly thought that my services were optical services, like, you know. But when you really look at it carefully, Optimal Solutions fits because what we offer are those optimal solutions, and that tagline is for a better life. Right?
Okay. Yeah. All right. And could you just share briefly what some of the services that you provide are? We stated them in the bio, but just to explain to people, what they can get.
So there's counseling and psychotherapy, and you cannot, I guess people may mistake those two. What is the difference between counseling and psychotherapy? When we talk about counseling, it's really a situation where a person may find themselves stuck between two decisions, and they just need to bounce their situation off somebody who is going to help them navigate through the issues and decide on their own, not deciding for them, right? We're careful not to tell people what to do. And so this is where counseling comes in. It is not necessarily giving advice, but there is a form of guidance in there, where you guide a person to an end result that is beneficial to them. Psychotherapy now deals with resolving emotional distresses, emotional and psychological distresses. It could be a situation that is happening or has happened and the effect is lingering, then psychotherapy will focus on that resolution that restores emotional and psychological well-being to the individual, right? Also do teletherapy, which is via this medium, right?
Yeah.
But teletherapy is really the term given to counseling or psychotherapy that is done virtually.
Right.
Essentially. Right. Then there's the Employee Assistance Program, which is a program that is sponsored by the employer and would allow for a certain number of sessions for the employee per month. Anything beyond that, they would have to pay for themselves. The Employee Assistance Program that I favor is the household model approach that does not only consider the employee in isolation, but if there's an issue at home, then a family member can actually access
that
the service. Yeah, immediate, not a distant cousin down the road.
Right. My whole family needs services. Yeah. I love that. I really love that because like I said, I didn't know that was available. I've been able to access that when I used to work in the US, and it's a great, even just a good like entry point into something if you're not sure that you really want to commit to therapy, but hey, it's included in the job benefits, so try one or two and then you're able to get into it. So that's good. Anything else?
Yes. Workshops and seminars which focus on a host of psychoeducational topics like emotional intelligence, for example. Being able to understand oneself in the context of other people, conflict resolution, anger management, stress management, grieving, right? Which is a big deal. Personal awareness. The list can go on and on. There are a number of topics that would come up in these sessions. What I have been doing also is something that I do not, it's available, not that I look forward to it. It's a service that I would rather not have to deliver. That is the critical incident stress debriefing that comes when an employee or coworker dies, for example, or there is a robbery or some type of traumatic workplace event. Then I also do stress debrief sessions for the employees, particularly those who would have been directly impacted by the event. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a really good holistic set of services there. So
the very last one is psychological assessment, which is different to psychiatric assessment, but psychological assessment when it comes to confirming or ruling out the existence of psychological distress or psychological disorders. Then we assess. For example, I have been assessing for depression quite a lot lately because depression, based on where I sit, I can see that depression is definitely on the rise in Grenada.
Coming out of COVID, I'm assuming is a big factor? Or
interestingly, even before COVID.
Okay.
Like life in general. I think the fact that we are becoming more and more northernized, Americanized, more individualistic, and people actually have nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
People are just about their business and the community spirit, it's alive, but it has suffered many deaths over the years, which is something that I believe we've lost. And because of the link between isolation and depression, that people being isolated far more now than before are experiencing depression far more now than before. Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything else that you've seen, I guess, broadly across Grenada? So we hear that, again, with the stigma and so on, we hear that maybe the younger populations are more receptive. Maybe men in general are less receptive. But I've heard to and against that argument or that statement. So what are you actually seeing out there in the practice?
Interestingly, the variations between those populations, it's so marginal that it's not even that much to talk about. Like young people, middle-aged people, and older people are accessing the service. And when I say young, middle-aged, and older, I'm talking both male and female. Okay? It is really not that I can say, well, I'm seeing women in abundance, and that number is ahead of men by leaps and bounds. Naturally, there are some more women attending, but
that can also be population.
Margin is not enough to talk about.
Right.
It's like men are actually interested in getting this thing done.
That's promising. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Good. And so with your practice, is it just you, or do you have other colleagues with you who also provide these services?
So just me for now, but that's going to change very soon.
Okay.
I'm working on that.
Good. All right. Well, all the best with that.
Thank you very much.
All right. So where do you see, I guess this kind of goes into that question, where do you see yourself in your career going in the next 5-10 years? What are you hoping for, Josh Hector?
Now that you put it that way, what I hope for Josh Hector? It's my response is so interesting. Because by next year I intend to complete my doctorate, right? This is one of those things that I guess there were some delays, life is happening, all of this is happening, and I'm trying to get this thing done.
Yes.
And sometimes it's a lot of things. Sometimes you're just kind of swimming against the tide, but it's getting done. And I anticipate completing this by next year.
Great.
Beyond that, my plan for myself is sort of merged to a plan for Grenada, just the establishment of a clinic that would allow people to access certain specialized services locally, and they would not have to travel overseas, right, to get specific kinds of assessments and diagnoses and even treatments, because we do not have the facility or the equipment here. For me, that's the ultimate, to serve in that way, and to see people getting the help that they need locally. Yeah.
What we need. Well, Josh, I truly appreciated this conversation. I think it's much needed. We need to be having more open discussions and talking about mental health and therapy and what's available, what's out there. And I really love everything that you're doing and planning to do for Grenada, for the community. And also just normalizing the idea that, you know, life or a career is not a straight path. So
Yeah.
10 years ago, this is not where you thought you would be, right?
No way.
So given all of that, what is a little piece of advice, maybe that you wish someone had given you when you were younger, let's say 10 years ago?
So that bit of advice is something that came through a dear friend of mine. It could have been year before, or last year rather. Something that I did not realize I was doing. This guy said to me, listen, how often do you hang out with life? How often do you go on a date with life? And I'm like, what do you mean by this? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And the idea is that life has a way of inviting us to experience and explore certain things that we would decide, you know what, this is not for me, or things that we would go, wow, I can't believe I was missing out on this.
Yeah.
Right? And we would never know until we say yes and go on that date and just have experienced things for the sake of exploration and for the sake of understanding what our place is in life. Like, I would not have known what my place is until I said yes to that call. And there are so many other things. I said yes to the call of lecturing. I said yes to the call of joining the regional association. You see what I'm saying? Like, we actually have to say yes to certain things to live this holistic life. And so I'd encourage everybody, both young and old, if you are a bit closed up and not interested in things outside of the status quo, that might not be so good for you. Hang out with life, go on a date with life, and see what life has to offer.
I really like that analogy. I'm going to steal that. So how often do you go on dates with life?
No, truth be told, it's
easier said than done.
I won't say easier said than done. I mean, I do things that, I mean, my pastimes right now, believe it or not, is riding a motorcycle, for example, spearfishing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Just exploring things that I never would have done before. Of course, not putting my life at risk in any way, but definitely being open to experience new things. So I still hang out, actually.
Good to hear it. Well, I think that's the perfect place to wrap it up right there. Keep listening. We'll be right back after a short break. This season of Pathways is brought to you by Telesford Countertop and General Construction Services, your #1 source for quartz and solid surface. Their services are not only limited to countertops, their team builds homes, cabinets, vanities, does 3D images, renovations, and quantity estimates. Telesford Countertop and General Construction Services' mission statement is pride and delivery upon customer satisfaction. Contact them today at 435-0133 to get started on your construction project.
Hello, my name is Anthony Benjamin, and I am a university student.
I'm Raman. I'm also a university student, but I also work full-time. I do software development, have my own personal business, and work as a consultant for a company in Chicago.
So first of all, I want to say that I think it's really great that both of you as young males are here to talk about mental health, where we also had a male psychiatrist speaking on the topic. I kind of wish we had a little bit more woman power on here to get the different sides of the story, but I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. So
You'll get the job done.
let's get into it. Yeah, I'll just represent all females. Generally speaking, what is some of your personal experiences, I guess, or your perspective on mental health, specifically in Grenada in the Caribbean?
We don't really focus much on it. I mean, it's like something very foreign to a lot of people, and it's something that's getting like put into a serious spotlight right now. So I think that's a good direction right now as it relates to mental health.
Are you aware of, places that you can go to get mental health attention or therapy or counseling, or what options are available to you?
Yeah, I'm kind of aware that, the professionals exist.
Okay.
There's that stigma that, nobody wants to go seek mental health. But I guess since I've been little, I've been aware of the existence mainly because my family is kind of in that network. But yeah.
What about in your circles or in your friend groups with your colleagues? Is it something that anyone really speaks about that you know of?
Yeah, it's something that's being spoken about a lot. I mean, my group, it's mainly a bunch of psychology students, so we're a lot on this topic. Yeah, a lot of people are going into psychology, and that's a good step in the right direction.
You hear a lot about either guys don't worry about their mental health, or they don't think that they need therapy, or just people in general. But talking with Josh, he mentioned that it's from the side of being the psychiatrist and seeing certain patients from time to time. He hasn't really seen that stigma, so he can't say that he only sees men or he only sees women. But there is, as you said, the stigma where people don't talk about it. So on the outside, you may say like, oh, nobody goes to therapy, or that's for crazy people, blah blah blah, and all these negative connotations that we have. But at the end of the day, people are discreetly getting the help that they need. So I guess it's the first step, and it's still a good thing that people are realizing that they may need assistance in different ways and seeking it out, even if they're not ready to share that with the rest of the world yet. One thing I thought that was interesting that he spoke about was how he got into the practice. So it was the fact that he started in theology school, a seminary school, and from there, which was not something that he wanted to do at all, it was kind of forced on him by his parents. But in the classes that he did there, he got interested in psychology, and that just stuck with him from that point. And so he ended up going straight into a master's program for psychology after that. And then even when returning home, there was, when you're in school, it's like, oh, I'm going to change the world, and like there's all these great things. And then you come back home and like everything's difficult. It's hard to get a job in your field. And so that happened to him. He had that point where it was just like, well, what do I do now? And he ended up being a full-time musician for 3 years because it's something that he always did, and it was making money at the time. So he left the profession completely for a while, and he only got back into it because he met a random SQ professor at one of his gigs who said, hey, I heard you're a psychology major, come see me. And that launched him into his career as a psychologist in Grenada, basically. So he started off doing employee assistance programs for the public service, which I didn't even know that was an option in Grenada. Like I've experienced employee assistance programs in the US, which were really beneficial as a starting point, I feel like. That's how I started going to therapy, because it was free with the health benefits. It's like, oh, let me try this out. So that was something that was offered in the public service, and then from there he started getting more clients, and then eventually developed his business that he has today, which is called Soloutions. Based on that trajectory, I thought that it was very interesting, because it's something that we keep seeing and with all the different guests.
It's something common.
Yeah.
You go into a field and then you find something that you like, and then you build on it, and then you come back, you're not sure, and then something happens, and then everything just blows out.
It's just like chance opportunities almost that get you into the next step and the next step, and even though at the time you don't realize what's happening, when you look back, you're like, this all made sense. to get me where I am today.
And it's good that he had like other like hobby that he could do. And through that, he actually met somebody through that.
I think it's important to, diverse your sources of income, kind of like sidestepping into the next topic. But yeah, I think everybody should, do something that they like, that's passion. If you can make money from it, that's like a big plus. Yeah.
Another thing that came up in the discussion was the idea of kind of the general vibe of society, I guess, today. And something that he mentioned that I didn't realize was a thing that was happening is that he's seeing a lot of depression just across the board. And so I immediately thought it was, COVID and all of that, because been through a depressing time. But he said even before that, he's seeing that a lot of people are just depressed, and it may stem from different, things, whether it's family situations or just general well-being, financial well-being, and so on, that is causing this overarching negative emotion across the whole country. What do you think about that?
Based on certain things that I've seen, I've noticed that some people don't realize that they're depressed, and they're depressed for a long time until they seek attention, and that helps. They come back and say, okay, this helped me, and so on. So the thing is, I believe that that's probably the case. Like, so many people are depressed all the time, but like they don't have they haven't really.
They don't have the language.
They don't have the language to express that.
And I think that goes back to, I guess, mental health education, because that is true. I think across the Caribbean, and maybe you can expand and see like in Black culture globally, we're kind of grown up to think that we have to just deal with things and go through it, and that's
accept
life.
things as they are.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you could be in the worst funk, and you're just like,
that's just life.
That's
just life. You gotta get through it.
And you could literally be, because these mental health issues are actual issues. Like, you can be diagnosed as clinically depressed or anxious, and that affects so many different things in your life. And just not having the words, because you might feel like, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to go to work for days, weeks on end.
Yeah, and the burnout really hits you when that happens. I mean, 2 weeks at a time, you can't be working, like you don't feel
like something. And it's really hard to get out of.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's difficult. Like, when you have a cut, you put on a Band-Aid. People, like regular health people, know how to address it, but when it comes to mental, we don't know how to recognize that we need help. That's just the first thing.
Right.
And then I think we're more knowledgeable of like getting it, but it's still there, that stigma of like, this is life, it is what it is.
Talking about it more, which I'm hearing it more in different circles, like on podcasts or on the news, or in different groups, you're seeing people start to talk about the importance of mental health and so on. And I guess like everything, it's going to take some time to really catch on. At least I'm hearing about it more in the younger groups coming up. And from Josh's perspective, it's not just the youth, but it's also older folks who are also seeking help when they feel that they need it. So I guess, and something that was interesting to me and that I really liked is that his company, Optimal Solutions, they actually offer a wide range of services, whether it's like family counseling or one-on-one or grief counseling. So just having people know what's out there and available to them, I think is like the first step in helping people to recognize and cope with their situations.
Yeah, I didn't realize when he was going through all the services that his business offered, I was kind of impressed. I was like, I knew we had like counselors and psychologists here, but I didn't realize we had like these specialized people that could handle these situations.
Right.
Specifically.
Very holistic.
Yeah. Going back to like Black culture and things like just accepting life, that really resonated with me. I'm a Kendrick stan, I love Kendrick Lamar. His latest album, what is it called again? Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It's basically like a therapy album. Yeah. That's the theme of the album. Yeah, it's going through sessions of him talking, like dealing with toxic issues in his life.
Wow.
Yeah, I noticed that from that album as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like talking about the toxicity in like there was this one that was probably the only song I listened to right now because I didn't get time, but it was talking about the toxicity in like a black couple and so on, like and even though they cussing each other out, I mean they still get back together after a while. Yeah, I mean they probably need like counseling for that though. Yeah, it's kind of that toxic relationship. Yeah.
On that topic, I was having this discussion with like at least 2 different groups of people in the past week about people who are just so used to toxic situations that it's the norm to them. And it's so unfortunate because you get that a lot, whether you grew up in an abusive household or you're just in these negative environments where people are constantly arguing with each other or like speaking negatively on you and so on. And then it comes to a point where you feel like if you're not receiving that negative energy, then something's wrong.
Yeah.
And that is crazy.
I'm not accustomed to good things, I mean.
Yeah, when it becomes a normality.
Yeah, and then it leads to self-sabotage and so on.
Yeah. And that causes even deeper issues that, create unhealthy situations in life in general in society.
Yeah, that's why we need therapy.
But I think like with Kendrick and so on, I think a lot of like celebrities are really on the forefront of like bringing it as an issue. Like before I saw like a bunch of songs that are basically about mental health, like starting with probably XXX Tentacion, Rest His Soul and so on. Like he had a lot of songs on mental health. Then Juice WRLD. I mean, those are young guys and they were basically bringing out mental health and so on. So I think that was a plus and so on. I know we have like other rappers like Kendrick that's basically been doing this for a long time. I mean, but yeah, that album was just something icing on the cake for it and so on. So yeah, I think like we have a lot of resources for mental health, like more than before. Yeah.
Something that I specifically wanted to bring up with Josh, and we talked about it a little bit, was the idea of the small community that we are in Grenada and in the islands, where you might, even if you do go to a therapist, you have to see that person all the time. Like in a bigger country, if you go to a therapist, you just have that one relationship and you never have to see them anywhere else. But the idea that you're going to someone, telling them your whole life story and everything, and then you have to see them on the road, you see them in the grocery store, you see them at church, and it can be a deterrent to some people because they want to separate themselves from that relationship or interaction. And he was very, reassuring in the fact that there's a certain understanding, there's certain ethics and so on that goes with it, where you're not gonna just have your business on the street, of course, and also you have a understanding between patient and doctor that this is confidential and that you're not gonna meet in town and start talking about what you talk about in sessions. So that's important for people to understand. Also, the fact that if you're not interested in or not comfortable with going to a psychiatrist or a therapist, you can seek out other options. Because there's religious people, there's pastors and so on in our different churches and different communities which may be more comfortable with in our, Christian community, that you can reach out to licensed counselors and so on who would be able to guide you, and also from the faith-based perspective, if that's something that you're looking for. So I think that's important for people listening to understand that it's not just one thing or one option, but you have many different options in front of you.
Yeah. Even if you're antisocial and you really don't want to see somebody, there's some apps out there like Wysa, that's like a mental health app where WYSA.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also BetterHelp.
Yeah. I think that one connects you to like somebody remotely, right? Yeah. So there's.
It's all virtual.
Yeah, you could do virtual visits or talk to like a chat bot. Just sometimes it helps just to chat. Knowing that.
I'll share my personal experience on that a little bit. I haven't used BetterHelp or anything, but I used to think that like seeing a psychiatrist virtually would be weird, and that it wouldn't be the same as in person. But full disclosure, when I started therapy, which was not in Grenada, but I started in person, and then COVID hit, and so we had to transition to virtual, and it was actually kind of just the same. To be fair, we had built a relationship in person at first, so that probably makes it different. But it can be just as beneficial just having someone to talk to, even though it's over a call.
Yeah.
And it's something that we do all the time now because of COVID. You're used to being on Zoom with your friends and family, so it can be an option to look into if you don't want, someone local or someone that you know to talk to.
Yeah. And the point is just talking helps. Yeah.
Talking, even if it's with your friends, talking helps. Like sometimes you just want to rant. Sometimes I just call my friends. I'm like, listen,
I need to spill this.
Yeah, no, like I have some friends like, like sometimes I'll be the one that they rant to, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, just let it out. Let it go, and then they're good after.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need somebody to rant to. Yeah.
I guess that's another thing. It's important to have friends in your life who you feel like you can talk to. And sometimes, I'm gonna get like very philosophical, but sometimes it's like maybe you have to be the one to create that safe space for people. Because you might have really close friends, but you never really have spoken on that level or that kind of emotional nature. And so they might be like, oh, I don't know if I did talk to my friends about this. But everybody in that group might be like, man, I just want somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And as soon as somebody breaks the ice and it's like, yo, I need to talk about what I'm going through, then everyone just starts coming up with what
they add to it.
Yeah.
And so somebody just needs to start it.
Yeah.
And everybody's just like, okay, cool, I'll put in this and I'll put in this. And then at the end of the conversation, everybody is in a better place mentally.
Because I think we have this vibe in societies where you feel like you always have to be your best self for everybody that you're around.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult because sometimes you're not okay. And it's not that you don't want to interact with people, but you want to be able to share with them what you're going through.
Yeah. It's like that brings up like two thoughts. The first one is like being your best self. Like I feel like that's amplified today with like social media, like Instagram, there's that phrase, is it Instagram worthy? Is it good enough for me to not be judged by others? So there's that. And then I feel like when it's like that one-on-one, when you're being personal with people, there's also that, I feel like personally for me, I don't know if this is for everyone else, like I don't want to share my problems because I don't want to be a burden on this other person, right? Like I know they're probably dealing with a million things. So like me expressing myself to you about all the issues I'm having could just be like draining on you. So that builds up more anxiety.
I think that's why it's important to have the safe spaces, people that that, because it happens a lot. It's happened to me too, whether it's me or a friend, where we're in a situation and it's like, I have a lot going on, they have a lot going on, and one of us might go to the other and be like, if you have time, if I just need half hour, I just need to rant about some stuff. And it's like, okay, you can then set yourself aside and be like, all right, I'm going to forget my worries for a little bit and just hear. Because sometimes you don't have to do anything about it. It's just listening and being able to bounce your thoughts off of someone, let them feel that you're not crazy because of what you're thinking. And that's the other thing, just realizing that your emotions are valid. And having other people sometimes be able to validate your emotions. So not just be like, oh, you'll be fine. Like, that's not a big problem. Or, there's so many other people going through worse things. Like, yes, but still, I'm going through something right now. And this is how I feel about it. To feel a certain way about something, even though it's not the end of the world, but it still is affecting you in this moment. I do think that I wish that there were more outlets for people to talk freely about their feelings and things like that in general. So I'm glad that you all humored me a little bit today and were able to add some insight to the conversation.
Thanks for having us.
No problem.
And to the listeners, thank you for joining us on today's Pathway. Thanks so much for listening. We would absolutely appreciate your comments and feedback as we try to make this podcast more beneficial for you, our listeners and watchers. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a minute to press the review button, let us know how we're doing, and let others know that this is something that's worth their time. We also love to see your comments and engagement on social media, so head over to the post and let us know what you think about this latest episode.